This video is sponsored by Full Moon Features. If you or someone you know loves horror collectibles, be sure to check out Full Moon's Tiny Terrors, the perfect gift this holiday season. For more information, click the link below, or stick around till the end of this video.
Ho, ho, ho.
Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and a very happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you all. Yes, we are here with December to Dismember, this year's theme being all the creatures were stirring. Yes, we are doing all creature features this year, and we are kicking things off with, of course, Gremlins, which this is a film we've definitely been wanting to talk about for many moons, and this gives us a great excuse to do so. But yeah, no, this is a lot of fun. This was definitely a departure from last year where we did the killer Santa Claus-esque films when we had things like Christmas Bloody Christmas coming out. And of course, we went through the arduous journey of reviewing every single Silent Night, Deadly Night film. And I just about killed Luke with that. So that was definitely different. Not going to be as many reviews this year as that was, but we do have a lot of Christmas related content and lots of great creature related content coming to you guys. So Luke, how are you feeling about December to Dismember this year?
Oh man, it's really exciting. Us diving into creature features and kind of just some of our favorites. I think it's going to be a lot of fun because you look at those and they're so diverse, I guess. You know, there's so many different elements that are brought to these creature features, and the ones that we have, the lineup that we have laid out right now, they are very diverse, and there is a lot of different things that are being brought. So as we do some dives into these creature features with these videos, it's going to be something we're always going to have a different discussion, I think, because of the lineup that we did choose.
Absolutely. And that was, I think, the intent. We just wanted to do something different. But before we dive into the different stuff, I mean, we got to do something that's holiday. You know, we got to do something that's Christmas. And
Kick it off
what
right.
is the quintessential Christmas holiday film? I mean, if you're talking to many people, Gremlins is on that list, if not the quintessential holiday creature feature film. I mean, I know there's debate. There's a specific film from 2015, which we will be talking about this year. We'll get there. But this one, I mean, even if you're not talking creatures features, this is one of those things where it's like, this movie is an all-timer. It's a classic. Everybody talks about it. And for good reason, because like revisiting this year, it's just one of those films that just, it's the perfect blend of holiday and horror. I think that this is just so great. And I think one of the big talking points that I'll have for it this time is that it's multi-generational, man. You can show this to kids, you can show this to adults, and everybody in between. And I think that everybody will find something to love about Gremlins.
Absolutely. You know, Gremlins is that OG film where everyone who's seen it absolutely loves it. I don't think I've ever met a person that disliked the Gremlins film, and it has a lot to offer in terms of being diverse, where I think it hits a lot of different points. We had a discussion a couple videos ago of what makes a good holiday horror, and I think you look at Gremlins as laying that groundwork and having that blueprint of something that's really going to hit in terms of that holiday horror, but also, bringing those holiday elements to something and then having those kinds of terrifying moments that aren't overly terrifying, especially as you grow older. You can find some humor in some of the things that we do see, but it does bring some gore, I think. And it has those, it's almost a perfect equation, I would say, something you can go back to. And like you're saying, multi-generational, where you could legitimately bring a family of children, of teenagers, of older people, and just turn on Gremlins for the holidays. And I think everyone's going to find something that they find entertaining, something they find terrifying, but everyone's going to have a great time.
Absolutely. And, one of those things, too, is like each like generation is going to pull something different depending on when they sit down and watch this. Like you said, it's if you show this to a child, they're going to be terrified. I know I was. And, I talk about Leprechaun and Pennywise being those quintessential horror icons that scared me growing up, were the ones that really got under my skin. But Stripe was there too for a long time. I would say Stripe was one of the very first ones that scared me a lot as a kid, but I loved the movie so much that I was able to push through it. And then before you know it, it grew on me as just being a really cool character. But those first few viewings, man, Stripe is a scary mf'er, dude. Like, my god, what an imposing little monster that is. Like, in my opinion, the quintessential gremlin. Whenever you think about a gremlin, you think about Stripe, and it's just because he's not only menacing, but of all the gremlins, he's easily the most conniving, the most intelligent when it comes to just his, when it comes to his mean nature. I mean, he's definitely intimidating through and through.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something where I've always resonated. I love the design of Stripe, but I also love that dichotomy of you have Gizmo and then you also have Stripe. And
Good and evil.
yeah, creating this kind of this very cute, lovable little creature, and then something that spawned from him is this diabolical, menacing, cool looking creature, in a sense, and it was something where even as a kid, I always found it so intriguing. I always absolutely loved, especially the antics of Stripe, where you're kind of you have that human element into it, but it is a tale of, good versus evil, and we're dealing with creatures that, are not human. And it's something where I always find that so entertaining, especially as we go through that story and as we get further and further along. And just the entertaining elements that they put into it, where Gizmo does need that human connection, where Stripe is just kind of all out doing his own thing, and he's so premeditated in what he's doing, and trying to kind of spawn more gremlins and just wreak terror on the town. I absolutely love that element and just that kind of dynamic that they do bring to this film.
100%. And originally, if you didn't know this, Stripe and Gizmo were supposed to be the same character. This change was only after Steven Spielberg had basically insisted that the audience needed more of a vessel when it came to the creatures, and he said you need to, keep one of them or keep the main one as a Mogwai, and then have another one transform into the bad one. And I love that. I mean, again, Steven Spielberg, say what you will about him, and we don't get to talk about him much in the horror space. I mean, we haven't talked about Jaws, even though I think that it's my favorite film of all time. Not my favorite horror film because I don't classify it as much of a horror film. It's got horror elements, but we'll get there. But I mean, he's a genius. He's one of those people that there's a reason why Steven Spielberg is considered the godfather of filmmaking, or the modern day film, because of little things like that. I mean, look what he did with Poltergeist. I mean, there were so many people who said that he ghost directed that film, and his influence is seen through this as well. I mean, this came out and was shot on the same backlot as Back to the Future, another film that he produced. He had his hands in all these things, and letting all these filmmakers like a Joe Dante, like a Robert Zemeckis come in and make these really interesting flicks. And I gotta say, it's like one of those moments where it's like Steven Spielberg literally shepherded this film to being made. And like without him, I don't think that we would have had the same Gremlins, because there's also that story of them wanting him to cut that pivotal scene with Phoebe Cates where she talks about her dad, because the way she delivers it's so dark and sad and scary.
The house was freezing, so I went to try to light up the fire. And that's when I noticed the smell. The firemen came and broke through the chimney top. And me and Mom were expecting them to pull out a dead cat or a bird. And instead, they pulled out my father.
That it's one of those things where the studio wanted that cut, but Spielberg, because he's Spielberg, had the final say, and he said, Joe, it's your movie, you put it in if you want, or you take it out if you want. And again, that's just one of those things where it's like, say what you will about Spielberg, but you have got to give him respect for that. And again, I don't think that this movie would be the same without him.
Absolutely not. And looking at that and just the idea of Gizmo, it being that, again, Gremlins is a blueprint for holiday horror, but I think Gizmo is a blueprint for a lot of creatures we do see down the line. And I think a lot of people talk about Baby Yoda being very resembles very much Gizmo, and I
Oh, yeah.
think you do see those elements. And taking Gizmo, I think keeping him the good guy of the film, I think is one of those vital elements as to why Gremlins is so timeless, is because you look at that you look at the Gizmo character, and kids absolutely love him. Adults love him. So it's one of those things where whether you've seen the film or you don't, if you haven't, Gizmo is such an iconic pop culture icon that it's something where Gremlins, and it's something that I think that's why this film is going to live on, is because you created such a lovable character there. And then, just looking at that Steven Spielberg element, he added so much in terms of, having that leeway and, being able to take this film because, if this was a straight out horror film, us two would probably still be talking about this because we love
Mhm.
horror. But, this kind of bleeding over into pop culture like it did, and then being able to create that sequel, which is a little different than what we got with the original Gremlins. It's
I
still a
still
great
love
film.
it.
Yeah,
It's such a good movie.
absolutely.
We'll get
It's
there.
just, yeah, it's one of those things where, you kind of flip it on its head a little bit and it offers something very different. And I think, having him in the ear here and, being able to kind of, yeah, shepherd those elements and kind of have that true vision and also make a film that is going to um, reach out to a bigger general audience is one of the big reasons why Gremlins is so talked about. And it's something where you can dust off every holiday season and watch it with a family.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think that this is just one of those films that is truly timeless. And again, we always come back to this. You're gonna get a lot of this month with December to Dismember because of obviously creatures. But the practical effects here, man, they still hold up to me. I think the puppetry and just the effects work in general in this film is so strong. And you bring those elements of, like you said, in the modern day of like Baby Yoda getting comparisons to Gizmo. I think like every facet of these critters looks great. I mean, you got the everything from, Gizmo to the other Mogwai to the eggs themselves and how that whole sequence works, and then even down to just the gremlins. And I think that the only sequence that really, and I have the film on 4K, that's what I watched it on. So it's one of those things where I was really worried because I hadn't watched it since I had bought it on 4K, but I was really worried to see how that street scene was going to play out, where all the gremlins are lined up and it's stop motion.
Mhm.
Does it look dated? Yes. But does it look great? Yeah. No, I'm still sold. And I think that it's one of the few times where stop motion, it works with the zaniness of the characters. The puppetry works with the zaniness of the characters. It's kind of like those little inconsistencies that you could potentially pick out. You can forgive it because of just what the gremlins are and how wild they are.
And using that stop motion, to me, I absolutely love it. I think it complements the film and it fits the film's tone so well. That kind of melding those things in there, I think you absolutely needed it. It adds to that Gremlins charm of every time I watch this thing, it kind of gives you're always looking for holiday horror. For me, you're looking for those warm and fuzzies. And as soon as we get to that stop motion stuff, I absolutely love it. And just like the practical design here of going from the lovable creature of Gizmo and the terrifying um, spawning of the gremlins and the scales and the long arms just are absolutely terrifying. And then as we're talking about practical effects, when you get to I'm hoping you've seen this film, so we're not spoiling anything. When you get to Stripe's demise, that for me, that is just something that has always stuck in my head. From the standpoint of seeing him disintegrate in a sense into a puddle of goo is just something that is so iconic and so well done, especially for 1984. I mean, to know the work that they put into making all these puppets work and how many different versions of each one that did something different in terms of they could only do so much because they were kind of the technology wasn't there in a sense, to kind of, do everything that they do in modern times. And then looking at that bar scene where it's like you have so many of them doing different things and, how long that took to film, just how intricate those things are. It shows the love in this film because, you could have played this straight and just had very minimal things going on. But, they really create an atmosphere here with the gremlins where you're terrified of them, but then there's so many comedic elements to it that you absolutely love them one scene and then you're totally terrified the next.
Oh yeah, and one of my favorite sequences, I had to say, like last night, or not last night, the other day when I watched this was just having the sequence with the mother where she's by herself in the house is like that was always the scene that got me as a kid. That was always the part that really scared me from the runner up. I mean, the part with the teacher is a little creepy, but it's one of those things where it's like they cut away and you only see the aftermath of that, but like the tension is so there, and it's like you can really tell that Joe Dante, he's a horror filmmaker at his roots. I mean, like this is the guy who made The Howling, and it's like this is one of those things where it's like he executed that sequence beautifully, because everything from the gremlin in the blender being a fun gag and how that went, and then of course she goes full like psycho mode and stabs that gremlin in the chest with the butcher knife, and then there's just another one and she's about had it. She throws that one in the microwave, which to me, I mean, I'm right there with you. That Stripe is easily one of the most impressive deaths when it comes to the gremlins, but the microwave kill to me is also one of those ones where it's just like, this is great, this is really fun, this is really leaning into the cheesy side of it and having just like, we're in a household kitchen, what can we use to kill these little monsters, and it's like it's so creative. But what always terrified me, what always got me in that scene, it was the Christmas tree. When you see those red eyes as a kid,
Great
and
visual.
it attacks her, yeah, and then Billy has to come in and hack the head off with the chainsaw into the fire. I mean, with the sword into the fireplace. Like that is holiday horror magic, in my opinion.
And everyone that listens to our videos knows my kind of issues with horror and comedy. And like looking at Gremlins, if you want a perfect dynamic and a perfect melding of horror and comedy, look at Gremlins. Because looking at that Christmas tree scene where it can be, describing it to someone could be comical. In the idea, it could be comical, but the way it's played, it's so terrifying because those red eyes are just glowing, and you already know as an audience of what's going to be happening before the mother does. And just having her in the house alone with all these different creatures, and one of them's eating a cookie, but it's played in such a terrifying way that the threat that is there and how many that could be there, especially when she goes into the attic and you see a bunch of eggs and the smoke around them and everything. It's just such a terrifying setting.
Huge alien callback too, man.
Absolutely.
Watching that and seeing those eggs, I'm just like, they're definitely honing in on Alien there.
Like, and it's a great aesthetic, and it's terrifying, and you're secluded in this house by yourself with all these little green creatures, and just throwing them in the microwave. Again, I could be a comical scene, but it's played so well, and then you balance that horror with the comedy. That's why Gremlins is an all-time classic.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, we got to give it to the cast here too. There's a lot of deep cuts in here, and for 1984, there's actually quite a few big names in this. I mean, obviously, if it's Joe Dante, and I know I'm jumping down the cast list here, but I do want to mention the great Dick Miller as Mr. Futterman.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's fantastic in this. He's even better in the sequel. I love him, and I absolutely adore him in The Howling. It's one of those things where it's like, I like to think that he is just Mr. Futterman living different lives through all of Joe Dante's films. But then I really think the two that stood out to me the most, and I love Zach Galligan. I do. I think he's great. He's always someone that I get excited about when I see him in films, just because it's like, oh, that's Billy from Gremlins. That's somebody that, is always going to be recognizable to me. But I think that the two that really stuck out to me this time around were Phoebe Cates. I mean, she's, again, wonderful in this. Her speech is so gut-wrenching to hear, and just the way she delivers it, it's like she definitely brought another level to that whole sequence there. Because, again, this is a fun movie. It's got its scary horror elements, but that's the most, like, tragic and, like, real down-to-earth, like, emotional moment that we get throughout this film, in my opinion, and she sells it so well. And then I think it's Hoyt Axton as Randall, and that's his dad, Billy's dad. Just what a lovable character as a film father. He's one of those ones that I think is super underrated, because I mean, he's a crazy ass inventor, and he's just a traveling salesman going around he picks up this little hamster mogwai looking thing, brings it home to his son, and kicks this whole thing off unintentionally. But he's got so many great moments, and I think that he just brings such a great personality to it. You can see that he really loves his family and loves his son, and goddamn, his wife is a real trooper for standing behind that man as he just builds like little what is it, the
Oh,
portable shaver, the portable
yes.
bathroom, the bathroom buddy, I think it's called. Yeah,
Yes,
it's
yep.
like that's so fucking funny, dude. Like she's a trooper, man.
And that's where it's like I think they've assembled such a wholesome cast in a sense where I think the dad really does sell it where he's only in it sparingly, but as they check in on him as all these events are going on
Yeah.
and then he shows up at the very end. I absolutely love those elements to it. It feels really organic, feels real, and I think all the performances they meld so well together and they play so well together that it really does feel like an authentic town. And as we go through our reviews and everything, I think that's such a big selling point. If you don't get the town right and the cast right, there is, a very limited hope for the rest of the film. And I think, assembling that cast and creating those opening scenes, especially when the dad's at Chinatown and then we kind of go back into the actual town itself, I think that really sets you in for this authentic feeling. Again, it's that warm and fuzzies. You want to sit by a fire and listen to the tale that's going to be told.
And going back, I know I didn't. You bring up the warm and fuzzies and the feelings of this, the matte painting that they use in the
Yes.
opening. I mean, like I love watching films from the '80s when they use matte paintings, and just how like it really does set itself into just a time period. It's one of those things to me where it's like throwing that on reminds me of when I threw this on VHS back in the day to watch this for the first time, and it just makes me so happy. And then also, it also, I've already mentioned, this is the same town setting that they used for Back to the Future. They just dressed it up, so if you're a film fan or you're a Back to the Future fan, you're going to get those. But then you also bring in those Christmas elements and the small town element there. There's a lot of great characters in here. We have the old lady, oh god, what's her name, who's just a complete bitch. Like we
Oh,
hate her, and she totally gets what she deserves. I'm gonna just pull her up on the cast here, but that is one of those things that's just so great. Mrs. Deagle, yeah,
there we
no,
go.
hate Mrs. Deagle, but she gets it with the fucking Christmas carolers. Brilliant. I love the zaniness of it. But going back to the kitchen scene, and I'm sorry, I think that just really flashed back to me when I rewatched this guy, so I keep going back to it. But the record player with that song, the "Do You See What I See," like so good how it just keeps coming back, and it's like that's again why I think this movie works so well as a perfect blend of horror, Christmas, and just family entertainment. I love Gremlins. I think that there's no two words about it that this is an all-timer. It's an ultimate classic, and it is one of not only the greatest creature features ever made, but this is definitely one of the greatest films ever made, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can second that. I think this is something where it has unlimited rewatch value. You look at it, there are so many strong points. There's not really any negatives that you can really bring to this film, and I think that's really why it's still stood the test of time here. And I think it's going to continue in terms of I own the 4K as well, and I think this is one of those essential films that no matter what kind of media format we end up getting in 10 years, if there is going to be one, but I think this is a film that's always going to be translated over because I think this is a film that's always going to find its audience. People are always going to love it, especially during the holidays. But then this is an easily digestible film you could throw on in the middle of summer and have so much fun with as well.
I couldn't agree more. And the last thing that I want to touch on before we wrap this up is I know it's been said, and I don't think there's as many detractors to the sequel as much as it seemed like there was when it first came out, just because of how different it was. I think that movie has a lot of love now, and I'm really happy because I've loved that movie since I saw it. And it is very different. And we just got Secret of the Mogwai, which I watched a few episodes with my son. It is good. It's entertaining. Um, but I think that it's time that we get another Gremlins. I think that we're ripe for it. I think that horror is ripe for it. Holiday horror, especially. I mean, between It's a Wonderful Knife and Thanksgiving this year, it's literally the time is prime, baby. Like, let's do it. Let's get another Gremlins. Let's use all practical effects. Let's put this in the hands of somebody competent. and let's do it. Like, let's make another one. Like, even like make it set in the same world. Like, have it just be, Gizmo gets picked up by another family or another person or something. Maybe you can have Billy come back and cameo. I don't care how you do it. Just let's get this going. Let's get some more Gremlins. It's obviously, I don't think it's ever going to touch the pureness of this one. I mean, even the sequel, as much as I love it, doesn't touch the pureness of this one. But it's one of those things where it's like, I think that there's still so much gas left in the tank for this concept that it's like, why we don't have 4 or 5 Gremlins movies, but we've got like 7 Critters movies. It's beyond me, man. I love Critters. I'm not talking shit. But like, this seems like it would have been something that they would have just churned out sequel after sequel to.
Yeah, absolutely. As much as I am intrigued to see another Gremlins, I'm a little hesitant just because, back in
That's
the
fair.
80s, it was, practical was the way to go. I don't know what that would look like in modern times if they would, more go CGI rather than any practical effects. And, I'm looking at Gremlins. It's such a time capsule, such a great film that, in the lineage of it, I don't know necessarily if I would, approve of a fully CGI Gremlins, just because of that original so well done and so iconic. I would love to play in this world so much more because there is a lot of lore to explore, I think. And of course, they've created a great character in Gizmo. So anytime you bring Gizmo back, I would love to see that on film. So yeah, I'd be open to another Gremlins. I just hope it would be done correctly instead of, just kind of cheapening out and getting something out there on the big screen. So I would love to play in this world way more than what we have seen lately, but I just don't know what that would look like. But hey, if there's a pitch out there, I am definitely open to it.
Well, that's the story. So if your air conditioner goes on the fritz, or your washing machine blows up, or your video recorder conks out, before you call the repairman, turn on all the lights, check all the closets and cupboards, look under all the beds, because you never can tell. There just might be a gremlin in your house.
Oh yeah, and I'm telling you right now, the person that I want to see do it more than anybody is Michael Dougherty. And I think that is, I know that's the easy pick, because he's done Krampus, and he's already had his little critters in there and he's done well with that. But like, Michael Dougherty, I think, would absolutely capture the tone and the feel. Like, you watch things like Trick or Treat and Krampus, like he already understands how to capture that kind of 80s holiday feel, and he's perfect in my opinion for this material.
Absolutely. I think, he would have a great understanding. I mean, I'm going to be biased. I'm wearing a trick or treat shirt, but, so he always has a great understanding, especially with those iconic properties like that. And of course, he's a great horror director and a great horror creative. So him bringing his brain into the Gremlins universe, hey, you're not going to have to twist my arm. And we'll
I
get
don't think
Sam
I
in there
would.
too.
Oh yeah, no, definitely have them both. Have him and Krampus need a cameo.
Let's do it.
Let's happen. Let's make it happen. But alrighty, guys, that is going to wrap us up here for Gremlins. Obviously, I don't think we really rank or give it other than just saying when it comes to these, but this is a must
It's a must
see
see.
if you need it. It's absolutely a must see. It's an all timer. It's a classic, grade A. This is prime beef right here. And I love this film. Luke loves this film, and I mean, let's talk about it. Get in the comments. Let us know how you guys feel. When was the first time you saw Gremlins? I want to ask you that. What was that experience like? Were you a child of the VHS era when you saw it, or were you older than us? Did you go and see this thing in theaters when it came out? Like, tell us all about it. Let us know what you thought. And yeah, guys, we got a lot more stuff to come as we continue with December to Dismember. Lots of fun stuff, lots more creatures to cover. And of course, we are still doing our promotion here with the Tiny Terrors. So definitely check out that link down below. You can order those bad boys. We do have a very special video coming to you guys here shortly with that. And yeah, that's I think going to wrap us up here. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, Merry Christmas.